Of course, the more toxic members of society will use it as a weapon against you. But those people aren't worth a so them. Here's my story. There have been a few videos made about me claiming that I'm taking steroids. All of them by people who wouldn't have the first clue on the subject, yet somehow managed to make 20-plus-minute videos all about it. I've not watched any of them. I don't wish to waste my time on toxic bullshit. No doubt there'll be some bonkers rationales as to how it's obvious that I'm taking them, and they'll be calling me a liar for not broadcasting the fact. They're obviously not aware that I've been honest about my former steroid use since day one on this channel. I had 2 or 3 videos talking about it early on, which, as I eventually decided to make YouTube my career, I since deleted, thinking that they may not be very sponsor friendly. I've continued to speak about it in my live streams though, should anyone ask. Just so you thickos can get it through your atherosclerosis riddled brains, this is how I look on steroids. According to my Facebook feed, where I pulled this photo from, the last time I took anabolics was in 2013. If you see me walking around at 130 kilos and bench pressing 180 kilos again, then you can use me as an excuse as to why you have to pay people to kill animals for you. Actually, come to think of it, no you can't. Despite my elevated protein needs doing such a dumb, extreme thing to my body, I still continue to grow as a vegan. So, sorry you little carnivore twerps, if I didn't need to eat animals then, you certainly don't need to be eating them now. Anyway, the reason I'm sharing today is not because I want to argue with idiots. They can think whatever they want. It's been my experience lately that when we talk honestly and openly, people respond really well and can benefit. Being authentic and vulnerable allows others to do likewise. We can bond on a deeper level, and depending upon what it is we're discussing, old wounds may even begin to heal. If we're talking about a negative behaviour, we can warn people of the dangers from a position of authority and hopefully stop them from making the same mistakes. Of course, the more toxic members of society will use it as a weapon against you. But those people aren't worth a so them. Here's my story. I was in my mid-20s when I started working as a bouncer. I wasn't a huge guy back then, but I trained rigorously for years in many different fighting arts and combat sports. It was very intimidating at first. My grounding in traditional karate had taught me to always try to avoid becoming physical. So historically, I'd always tried to avoid confrontation or diffuse a potential fight. As such, I hadn't been in many altercations. This wasn't a respectful dojo. There would be no padded gloves, no bell to signal the end of a round, and no referee to step in if things went wrong. In this new neon arena, there were multiple attackers and glass bottles, and the very real chance of ending up in hospital or worse. If I'm being honest, I was quite scared. Most other doormen were much larger than me and physically very imposing. When one of them asked me if I'd considered taking steroids, it piqued my curiosity. From a self-protection perspective, I liked the idea of looking more menacing. It'd be much easier to manhandle troublemakers. I'd have less need to strike them, which could land me in trouble with the law. And the extra muscle would serve as armour, soaking up some of the shots. I decided to do a tiny little course of tablets, which are faster acting than injectables, so it could come off quickly if I didn't get on with them. As they didn't kill me on the spot, I decided to run a longer course of the more powerful injectables. Of course, I grew at a rapid rate. I became stronger and more assertive. It was a very seductive pull. Over the years, I ended up taking more and more, and I'm sad to say I developed some very negative character traits. I never considered myself a bully. I would never start on someone for no reason. But if someone gave me an excuse, any excuse, you could be pretty sure that I would have to show them how tough I was now. It's funny, at the time I did some very horrible things. To a lot of people, I felt completely justified. Looking back now, I am filled with remorse and no better. Remorse not just about the violence, but for the way I treated the ladies in my life too. Under the influence of so much testosterone, I almost needed to have several women on the go at all times. So I'd pretty much say whatever I needed to them to get what I wanted, with no thought for their feelings. I enjoyed the feeling of being feared and respected, and felt very full of myself that I was such a hit with the ladies. But man, I was a horrible. What most people don't warn you about when you first start taking steroids is that although they're not physically addicting per se, because of that feeling of power and confidence, most men will have a terrible time ever being able to stop taking them. If you've been listening to this so far and you're interested to try them for yourself, just remember that fact. If you get on them, you're probably going to stay on them, no matter how you feel now in this moment. They're for your health, they're for your personality, and truth be told, I am very lucky that I didn't end up in prison because of them. Oh yeah, and if you do somehow manage to get off of them, you may end up with a ton of remorse, just like me. So just how did I get off of them, I hear you ask? Simple really. You may have heard me talk about this in another video that I did recently. Eventually, the pain of remaining the same became greater than the pain of changing. For some reason, out of nowhere, I suddenly developed almost like an allergy to them. Aching all over my body, extreme tiredness, chills, dizziness, and probably a whole host of other symptoms which I've since forgot. I researched and I researched, spoke to all the knowledgeable people that I knew, but there seemed to be no rhyme nor reason as to why this would be happening to me. I'd take a little break, and then I'd try a different compound, and then another, but immediately on taking it, no matter how small the dose, I keep getting these symptoms coming back. I didn't give up easily, but after months and months of trying, it became obvious that I couldn't do them anymore. I was devastated. Depression gripped me. I had the chemical low because men need a moderate amount of testosterone for good mood. And psychologically, I was in a terrible space. My whole self-worth was predicated on being huge and strong. Now young lads at the gym that I used to dwarf were getting bigger and bigger. I'd lost size and I was going nowhere. When I got my testosterone levels tested, the result came back as 3. I believe the scale was between 9 and 27. I was just plodding through life at this point with no enthusiasm for anything. Anyway, I retested again many months later and miraculously it had gone up to 15. Gentlemen, a word of warning. Most people do not get their testosterone levels back to a normal level after taking steroids. I was really lucky. You probably won't be. A lot of nonsense is talked about the need to have lots of dietary fats, including saturates, in our diet in order to produce steroid and other hormones. I can tell you from experience that that is complete. I know because I was only eating 10% of my calories from fats at the time. Anyway, I was eventually able to train pretty well again. Obviously, I would never be as big and strong as I was formerly, but it was enough for people to regularly tell me that they were surprised to learn that I was vegan. It was at that time that a certain synchronicity occurred. Whilst watching YouTube videos by the channel London Real, 2 were served up to me back to back. One by my hero of bodybuilding, Dorian Yates, and the other by Jeff Thompson, whose grounding was in the same style of karate as me, and I followed his example to work the doors to try and find out how martial arts might fit into real encounters. Dorian was talking about an experience he'd had in the Peruvian rainforest drinking the plant medicine ayahuasca. He said that during his visit to the spirit realm, or while he was tripping his off, depending on your religion, he met his higher self, who told him that ego was the only problem in the world. This struck a chord and made complete sense to me. I'm conscious that, more when we're younger I suppose, when men walk into a room, they'll size up the other men and try to work out who they could or couldn't beat in a fight. And for women, they'll perceive who they consider themselves prettier than or not. He was told that we're all one, so arguing is ridiculous because you're arguing with yourself. I thought back to how the steroids had made me hostile, egocentric, and self-serving. Imagine if everyone, rather than thinking, what can I get from this person, thought, what can I do for this person? Imagine what 8 billion humans could do if we all worked together for the benefit of everyone. No more war, no more poverty. Pretty cool, right? And if you say it'll never happen, people don't act like that, I ask you, are you living that way? Are you part of the solution, or are you currently also part of the problem? Maybe if we decide to change, we'll inspire others. Anyway, I digress. Next, Jeff Thompson, instead of talking about how to cave someone's face in, was saying that he'd found spiritualism too. He said that he'd been studying all the religious texts, had been meditating on it deeply, and had come to the conclusion that the point of all religions could be distilled down into selfless service. Selfless service. Doing good for others for no other reason than to be kind. My mind saw that as yet another message for me to stop being so egocentric. The two people that I idolized most, from the two greatest loves in my life, one after the other, with the same message for me. In that moment, I felt that the universe was talking to me, explaining why I developed this terrible reaction to those ego-building steroids. I was not meant to be doing them anymore. It was no longer my path. I was here to be of service to others. It was obvious where my efforts were best directed. I'd gone whole foods vegan on seeing the health risks of eating animals, and I'd felt the health boosting benefits for myself. I'd seen what animals go through to end up on our plates, and I'd eaten far more of them than most. And I'd become aware of the terrible devastation that animal agriculture was wreaking on Mother Earth. Save my fellow man from being the orchestrator of his own demise. Save animals from exploitation and suffering at our hands. And save our very planet for future generations. Well, I can't think of a better reason to get up in the morning. Can you? Now click this. You're me apparently, so you should do what I say if you stop and think about it.